This morning, investigators say a man with ties to Colorado Springs was behind the wheel when that Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. Matthew Livelsberger was killed in that blast. 7 other people were hurt. Overnight, federal investigators were searching a home in the Springs tied to the suspect.
We are also learning about connections between Livelsberger and the man accused of driving down Bourbon Street in New Orleans, purposely hitting people and firing shots into the crowd. Both men were Army veterans, and sources tell Denver 7 investigates that both men served at the same military base at some point.
This morning, we have team coverage starting with Natalie Chuck in Colorado Springs. And Natalie, both men also rented trucks from the attacks from the service called Turo.
That's right. Good morning, Nicole and Anusha. Right now, we are coming off of a pretty uneventful evening here at what is believed to be the apartment complex belonging to that driver of the Cybertruck that exploded in Las Vegas. But now we are seeing some activity. We were all just asked to leave the area and move down the hill a couple of blocks. You can see law enforcement behind me actively blocking off Autumn Knoll Drive right behind us. A couple of blocks up and to the left is where that complex is that they are looking at. Originally, law enforcement just had a single set of units blocked off, but now, as you can see, it is that whole entire neighborhood. People are beginning to wake up as the sun starts to come up, people walking their dogs, and this is what they are waking up to on the second day of 2025. I want to give you a look at the footage from around 9 o'clock last night when law enforcement started creating a perimeter right here. The apartment in question, sources confirmed they believe belongs to that man, that driver of the Cybertruck, and that is what investigators are honing in on here. We do not know or believe right now that investigators have actively gone in and searched that unit yet, but they have been monitoring this area all night long. We know that local and federal law enforcement agencies have boots on the ground here. A Colorado Springs police officer was just speaking with us earlier, originally saying we were going to have to leave the area at 7 o'clock. But as you can see, they had us do that a bit early. We also know that FBI and ATF agents were seen here last night from the address here in Colorado Springs to the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas can be seen on your screen. That's more than 800 miles. It's about a 12-hour drive. I did speak with a neighbor here who says she never noticed a Cybertruck in the area. She says it's something that typically would stick out. And again, like you mentioned earlier, those trucks, both this truck, this Cybertruck, and the truck involved in the New Orleans attack are believed to have been rented from an app called Turo that is used to rent out personal cars. Turo issuing a statement last night saying nothing was flagged on either of the suspects' accounts when they rented these cars that would cause them to question any sort of security threat. But of course, we are hoping to learn more about all of that today. We are expecting an update from law enforcement at some point today.
Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel, The War from Within. What we're seeing is psyops interweaved with psyops interweaved with psyops. It is so deeply rooted in psychological operation after psychological operation that the psyops are now even connecting to one another, but the narrative that they're feeding you is also part of the psyop. And if you haven't heard, the suspects in Vegas and the suspect in New Orleans are connected via not only using the same Turo app, which seems to be an app used by the military, but also serving at the same Army base. And that Army base is Fort Bragg. So you have the New Orleans truck driver, the ex-military veteran Shamsud Din Jabbar, who served at Fort Bragg. You have the Cybertruck bomber who blew himself up outside of Trump's casino in Las Vegas, who goes by the name of Matt Livelsberger, who is seen conveniently with photos of himself wearing what? Ukraine shirts, posting a lot of liberal ideology. So when I talk about the psyop within the psyop, you have these two guys who one guy has an ISIS flag, the other guy's wearing a Ukraine shirt. And then you also had the second failed Trump assassin, Ryan Ruth, who I covered months ago, the guy who supposedly sat on a golf course, somehow went undetected and attempted to take Donald Trump's life, but of course conveniently missed. He also had a connection of being at Fort Bragg over 150 times over the last couple of years. And that's the psyop within the psyop. Because what does this tell you? All three of these guys do what? They wear Ukraine shirts. They write about liberal ideologies. They talk about nationalism as if it's bad. And that's the psyop within the psyop narrative that is out there. Because trending right now are words like the CIA. The mainstream media are giving you force-fed paragraphs like this in the articles revolving around both of these events. They say, quote, given ongoing political divisions in the U.S., including over immigration and national security, the identity of the Las Vegas suspect and any established motive is likely to attract intense attention from both sides of the political spectrum, the left and the right, the paradigm that keeps everybody stuck inside of the matrix. You are not truly awake in any sense if you believe that your vote counts, that any of these politicians are serving you, that you have any say in the matter that's actually going on. That is the psychological operation. So while people are now talking about a connection between Fort Bragg, there's something they should be realizing there that they're not. The connection is that they're starting to see that the government and the infiltrated government of Democrats has gone rogue and is willing to take out their political opponents. This has been a narrative that we've heard over the last couple of years. That's part of the psyop. The people in power, the Republicans and the Democrats who are in power, are working together against all civilians and keeping all civilians confused, divided, and in a deep psychosis that they've created by design. When we talk about MK Ultra, this is not just, wow, they're making Manchurian candidates. Wow, is that like the Bourne Identity movies? We are all under MK Ultra. If you intake the news and take it as real, you're under a form of mind control. The psychosis comes from the media. It comes from scripted fake news, including events like this, where people have a very tough time understanding when I say that it's fake. They go, you're saying that nobody died? You're saying that it was done in a green screen? You're saying it didn't actually happen? They are carried out. The government carries out the event. So in other words, they script it. They say on New Year's Eve, let's target a popular tourist destination in America. Let's say Bourbon Street in New Orleans. And let's use a car because eventually what we want to do is get the civilians to turn on gas-powered cars because part of our agenda here is electric vehicles so we can control the movements of our civilians. So instead of using a gun for this event, well, we'll have them use a gun when we get out. How about that? Okay, so we're going to create this event. We're going to get a guy, one of our own, one of our military ops who's brainweave fried. We're going to put him behind the wheel. He's going to go and carry out this act because they're trained to do these things. Okay, these U.S. soldiers, they're not running around just with flags and being patriots for you. They're trained operatives under intense amounts of mind control who will carry out whatever act the government tells them to through the trauma-based mind control experiments that they put on them. So they say, hey, on New Year's Eve, you're going here. Here's your mission. Your mission is you're going to drive this car through these people, right? This guy isn't blinking. He's not thinking. He's not going, wait a minute, I don't want to run civilians over. They are under extreme mind control. They don't even blink or hesitate. They're super soldiers in a sense, which I'll get into in a minute because there's predictive programming tying in to Fort Bragg and all this stuff that you're seeing going on. So they tell him to go and carry that event out, right? He goes and he carries that event out. Do people actually die? In some cases like that in New Orleans, I'm sure they actually do. Do they plant a flag on his truck? Of course they do, so that you react to the psychological operation, so that you automatically have all these things implanted in your head that you don't even realize have been deliberately put there about the border, about ISIS, about Democrats allowing terrorists into our country. And then you react and you get angry. You want something done, right? Then you hear another psyop a few hours later, staged by the same exact people who decided to blow up a Cybertruck outside of Donald Trump's casino in Las Vegas. And all of a sudden, your brain starts going, something's going on here. There's got to be a connection between the two, right? We got an ISIS flag in New Orleans, so that's bad. That's lib. Then we got a Tesla truck, so that's Musk, who's now apparently serving in the White House, and Donald Trump. There's got to be a connection. Then they come out, the media comes out, and they tell you there's a connection. The connection is Fort Bragg. So this is already psychologically programming conservatives out there to think what? The military and the government are working together against Donald Trump. They're working together against nationalists. We're having a civil war brewing here and something needs to be done. And that's what this is going to eventually lead to. I've talked about it for years now. Blue states, red states, different militaries, different police states, in different states, different laws. This is what we're headed towards. So the narrative now that everybody has out there is that the government is doing this, they're carrying it out. But they don't seem to understand that it's deeper than that, that the left-right narrative is part of it. So you just taking the information and saying, look, they've been trained at Fort Bragg, there's a connection here. Yes, there is a connection here. But the real connection is that all of them are in on it together. And whether they stage the guy as being a liberal or a conservative, they're government operatives. Just like the people in power are government operatives, just like the people in Hollywood are government operatives. The design is to keep you psychologically under their control, and more importantly than anything else, divided. So what we're seeing is a direct connection between Las Vegas, New Orleans, and Fort Bragg. You could throw in the second assassination, the supposed shooter, the second assassination attempt, also a connection to Fort Bragg. And of course, if you look deep enough to any of these school shooters, their family ties, there's a connection to Fort Bragg. Why is there a connection to Fort Bragg? Well, Fort Bragg is the largest military base really in the world. But what is Fort Bragg known for? The majority of people don't know what they're known for. They're known for psychological operations, aka that word you see in a lot of my videos tagged, Psyop, a psychological operation. They house the 4th Psychological Operations Group and the 8th Psychological Operations Group airborne units at Fort Bragg. They even have their own little website with Dark Horse, the Psyop detachment, written on it right in front of your face, right? And there is a direct connection with Fort Bragg and MK Ultra and things like remote viewing, things like super soldiers, things I've discussed on my channels over the years. The direct connection is that this is the location where many of these experiments were taking place. So what the government did was they took a book that was written about this. There was a book called The Men Who Stare at Goats. And no, it's not a coincidence that that's the title of the book, especially if you understand what they're referencing when they say The Men Who Stare at Goats and the Baphomet. But The Men Who Stare at Goats was a best-selling book which explored the U.S. military's attempts to harness supernatural abilities for military purposes, okay? It took place at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. That was the site of these covert operations. So what they did, of course, was they took this book, which was nonfiction, and they turned it into what? A comedy. They turned it into a movie called The Men Who Stare at Goats, starring Hollywood's own CIA operative George Clooney, among others. And the entire premise of the film is what? A comedy. Because when you take something real and you turn it into a comedy, it makes it almost impossible for people out there to ever accept it as true. So all these things that we discuss, which are real topics, real mind control experiments, which are being done right now in real time on all of us, including MK Ultra every single day, every single time you ingest news from the corporate media. Okay, you're under MK Ultra if you actually believe it. If you're watching it in an alpha state of mind, if you're watching it where you're processing it and you understand what they're trying to get you to do, then you're not under MK Ultra. But if you watch the news and you believe it, from a story like, oh, Donald Trump is guilty of this and he's this and we don't like Donald Trump, that's not fake news. What fake news is the stories like in New Orleans when you think that some civilian organically went and did these things. That's where the psyop lies. The government carries out these events. It's a simulation that you're in. So the Men Who Stare at Goats, in that film, which I'm going to show you a clip from because, of course, it's truth in plain sight, Project Jedi is discussed, which was a top secret U.S. military project in the 1970s. They talk about remote viewing. They talk about these things, but they make light of it. They make it seem like remote viewing, these things are crazy, while showing you at the same time symbols I've exposed over and over again on this channel, like George Clooney with the monarch butterfly, or even the all-seeing eye being drawn, being tattooed on the bodies of all of these guys who are working within the government. But because it's a fictional film, because George Clooney is in it, the majority of people, when they hear someone like me talk about this, they'll be like, wait, he's comparing these guys to that funny movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats? This is what your government's actually doing. And when they create a movie, label it as comedy, and make it look over the top ridiculous, your brain processes that entire notion of what they're discussing when you hear someone like me talk about it as complete conspiracy fodder, and it makes you so desensitized to the topics being discussed that you laugh it off and dismiss it. These are some clips from that film, including them talking about how these operations were carried out at Fort Bragg, mentioning things like super soldiers, which is exactly what these people can be classified as, people who can be activated to carry out these events, like the guy driving the truck in New Orleans, who feel no emotion, who aren't thinking twice about it, aren't going, oh my gosh, I don't want to run over 15 innocent civilians. I don't want to grab a gun and go in the shootout. I don't want to die. They're super soldiers. They're trained to detonate. That's what they are. Here they are talking about it in this film, and of course, rubbing in your face who's really behind it while making humor around the all-seeing eye that you see on the back of your dollar bill.
I was trained at Fort Bragg under a secret initiative, codenamed Project Jedi. The objective of the project was to create super soldiers. What is this?
I don't know, it's just a doodle.
Events in life give an individual clues. It's the Anya chakra, the third eye, the symbol of the Jedi.
A young, likable lieutenant named Norman Pendleton was recruited to the New Earth Army. Larry had been doing research into the infamous CIA MK Ultra experiments, which he believed could enhance his own psychic powers. All he needed was a lab rat to try them out on.
This is primarily a Psyop's base.
Psy for psychic, right?
Psy for psychological, but the irony isn't wasted on me.
This is Psyop space. What are you doing here?
I said it was primarily Psyops. They're individuals in the current administration who are looking for creative solutions to the war on terror.
What is it? The dark side.
So that's how you see the truth in plain sight, right? They desensitize people. We constantly see predictive programming at films, right? Fort Bragg. This is the truth of the matter. Fort Bragg is where they carry out these types of experiments. You even have, as I showed you earlier, you have psychological operations groups working in our government, in our military at Fort Bragg, which they now apparently call Fort Liberty. And they still expect you to fall into the Psyop, because if you believe in the left-right, you could be awake to the CIA doing these things. And that's what we're starting to see. We see people who are awake who are saying the CIA is corrupt. The CIA is responsible for this. The CIA wants to, do this and this and this to humanity. But where they miss the boat is they think that the CIA is going after Donald Trump. Because if they keep you trapped in that boat, where you think in your head that, oh, Donald Trump organically just came into power because you voted him in, and the CIA is out to get him because the CIA can't hand select, put in whoever they want, and whack whoever they want in a moment's notice. Are you kidding me? Trump would have been gone a long time ago if they wanted him gone. This is the CIA. They can kill you in your sleep with a heart attack machine, okay? So that's where people get lost in the Psyop. You see, they think they're awake to the Psyop because they go, okay, we got Manchurian Cans, we got Fort Bragg, we got a connection here. These guys are Democrats of the deep state, and they're going after conservative MAGA, white nationalists, etc. They're bringing in ISIS. They're suckering you into the Psyop. That's the point. That's the point. Just being awake to the fact that Manchurian Candidates, MK Ultra, and all this stuff is real is one thing. But to not realize that by believing in Donald Trump and believing in these politicians and believing your vote counts, you're under MK Ultra and mind control. So there's no doubt that these guys have a connection to Fort Bragg, because guess what? There's likely a connection between every single one of these so-called shooters at any one of these events that occur, from a school to a mall to a parade, whatever, and whatever the weapon is. There's a connection to Fort Bragg because they're trained. They're trained operatives. They're super soldiers. They carry these out no different than you've been trained to think about how Al-Qaeda would get in a plane and drive it into two towers, not caring that they were going to die as they drive it in because they're praising Allah as they do it. They've trained you to believe that, but you can't believe that all these people in power, that all these people who serve in your military are carrying these events out the same way that those people, and guess what? Those people who carried that out didn't carry it out. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows those people didn't carry it out. But those people in those groups that, as I've discussed, from ISIS, ISIL, Hamas, they're all working with your own CIA and the Mossad. They all work together. And once they get these people, and once they get them into the military, they could take these people, put them in special units, and train them to carry these events out, and they wouldn't even know that they ever did it in the first place. This is nothing new. But what we're seeing now is some of these things beginning to be revealed. But they're not being revealed because the swamp is getting drained, because Donald Trump is a part of it. They're making you think that these people are going against fellow civilians. So now we have a civil war. We have Democrats who are rogue in the military who are attacking conservatives and conservative ideologies. We're going to have to split and live in two separate countries almost with two separate rules of law. That's what they want to lead us towards. That's why they're building these psyops out. And they're making you think that you're waking up to the deep state and what the government's doing by leading you to some of this truth, but while attaching you on to Donald Trump and attaching you on to the alt-right media. That's part of the trap. A real revolution occurs if you remove yourself from that trap. And you don't believe that trap. They're leading you like cattle, hence hurting humanity. So there's your connection to Fort Bragg with these people. As you saw, your connection between, again, there's always movies that have the truth right in it, because they don't do this stuff just to, make fun of us. And they don't do this stuff because they have a sick, twisted sense of humor, which they do have. They do it because there's a psychological aspect to revealing the actual truth in a comedy. It pre-programs your mind to dismiss the truth when you do finally come across it, or it is presented to you without you even knowing it. It's a subliminal way to automatically say, oh yeah, like that movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats. They think they could remote view. They think that they could, make a super soldier. And the way they show MK Ultra with the flashing lights and these other types of things, which are being done every day. How many cities do you go to? There's flashing lights. How many of these movies and these TV shows have flashing lights in front of you? Just because somebody's not standing in front of you holding up a light that's flashing in front of you like you're in Clockwork Orange doesn't mean that you're not under MK Ultra. They're doing it around us at all times. If you're watching television, if you're using your phone. There's many people are like, I don't watch TV anyway. I'm so glad I don't see this. You're listening to this on something, aren't you? You're on your phone. Your phone's the same thing as the television. What's the difference? You're getting your media from the phone. Just because you're not plugging it into a wall and sitting in front of it. You're just getting more EMF frequencies having your phone in your hand anyway. But this is what's happening in front of us, ladies and gentlemen. We are in a psyop within a psyop within a psyop. And the question is, how far do you want to remove yourself from the actual psyop? Because if you think that you're awake and you're still believing in the psyop, when you get to the point when you're saying these guys are in it together, the government's training these guys, they're under MK Ultra, and Donald Trump's the target. They're going after Donald Trump and Elon Musk because they're going to save us. Well, guess what? You're still in the psyop because that's interweaved in it as well. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless all of you as always and your families.